Hello, Robin.
Hey, Steve.
So today we're talking with Robin MacPherson, who's located in San Francisco and who is a polyglot and who has a channel, Robin MacPherson. I'll leave a link here in the description box. And he puts out interesting videos, such as, same as I do, about different aspects of language learning based on his own experience. Robin, you were saying just now that one of your most popular videos has been on the subject of
how to think in a foreign language.
So I'll let you describe the video, and maybe we can discuss that a bit.
Yeah, because the reason I want to talk with you about this is that in that video I try to present like a newer perspective, because I find that this question is asked all the time. How do I start thinking in a foreign language? And I have found that lots of people give a response that isn't super helpful, which is often like, well, the goal is to not think, right? The goal is to just speak, which may be true, but I don't think it doesn't satisfy this like big gap in this learner's desire for like, but I want to know, what should I be doing? So in that video, I presented this idea that one of the best things you can do is to actually sort of practice talking to yourself. And in the video, I went into some different techniques because people sometimes feel uncomfortable talking to yourself. But the reason why I suggested this is that when you think about thinking in general, it's a bit like an inside voice, right? And so I have found that once I get to a point where I'm not super concerned with speaking amazingly well. It's just that I start to talk to myself a lot. And I have found that this is a really good way of becoming comfortable with this sort of internal dialogue that maps quite well to this idea of thinking in a foreign language. So that's my thought. So the first thing is, I'm curious what you think about that. But the biggest thing I would love to hear from you about is that the most common question in the comments I have is people are terrified that by talking to themselves or just talking at all, they're going to be repeating their mistakes and sort of, causing permanent or semi-permanent damage because they're going to be just internalizing their mistakes. So what do you think about this idea of sort of talking to yourself, or maybe even journaling? It doesn't have to be spoken. This idea of an internal dialogue. And then how do you feel about this concern that so many people seem to have, that they'll be repeating their own mistakes by speaking at all?
Well, I think everyone has their own path, or the things that they like to do. So, I have tried talking to myself. I really can't keep it up for very long. I might say a few phrases during the day, phrases that are running through my mind as I'm learning a language, but I have not been able to do much talking to myself. So I really can't talk about that as how beneficial that is or might not be. As you know, my emphasis is on input. So I just find that through a lot of input, eventually the new language just is meaning. I'm no longer translating, it's just meaning. And similarly, as we start outputting in the language, we begin by doing a lot of translating from our own language, and in time we start reacting with the words and phrases that we've basically socked into our brain through a lot of input. So I just let that process happen. And I am not aware of any.
So when you do speak, though, it's not even. Let's say it's not even just to yourself. Yeah. When you start, because I remember watching way back when you did your Korean 90-day challenges, and you would go out to the laundromat with the Korean owners. Yeah. Do you worry about that you're going to be making mistakes and repeating them, and that those are going to become internalized?
Okay, I can't say that I don't worry about making mistakes. I prefer not to make mistakes. But if I let my worrying about mistakes inhibit me, then I won't speak. So I just go, I let it come out, however it comes out, and hopefully, and in fact, typically it gets better very, very slowly. It doesn't get better very quickly. Insofar as ingraining mistakes, I don't believe that happens as long as you maintain your input activities. So where you have people, and this is the case often with immigrants, they have sort of achieved a certain level where they can output certain things and they understand certain things, and that's as far as they're ever going to get in the language. In my case, when I listen and read, I continue my input activities. Even when I lived in Japan, I continue my input activities, listening all the time, reading all the time, trying to notice how the language works, so that actually I make fewer and fewer mistakes because I'm becoming more and more familiar with the language. But if you don't make that effort, if you just here's the language that I'm going to use, yeah, you might ingrain some mistakes. As you know, I'm not a great believer in speaking early, but I also don't believe that I think it's irrelevant. I don't think you would ingrain mistakes. I think it's possible to make a mistake today, not make it next week, and then make it again the following week. So, yeah. So I don't see that as a problem. I'm just not a big fan of speaking early, but if I'm in a situation like when I lived in Japan where I have people around me speaking the language, I will obviously take advantage every chance I get, and I won't worry about it.
Yeah, I agree, and I have a very similar approach by and large, where I tend to not. I don't speak early, and B, I tend to not really worry about speaking. It just sort of happens. But I have found that the more advanced I get in a language, the easier it becomes to fix my mistakes.
Right.
So a simple example is when I was living in Japan. I remember living there, and I was telling a story, and for whatever reason in that story, I kept referencing a lady who was part of the story, and I kept saying like kono onna or sono onna, this word onna meaning woman, and someone corrected me and they said it's not wrong, but it'd be a lot more appropriate for this particular setting if you said jose instead of onna. And I swear, because I was already at a very advanced level, I almost never made that mistake ever again. And those people who became close friends of mine, they pointed out multiple times, not just that one. Like, as they would correct me and as they would sort of give me suggestions, I would internalize them very, very quickly. And I've just always found that's why I don't worry so much about, maybe I get a couple of bad habits, maybe I'm repeating the same error. But I know that as I get better and better and better, it's in my experience, it's going to be easier and easier to actually patch those things up. And when I do, I'll actually understand why.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Or have you had any experiences?
Well, first of all, you can't rely on people correcting your mistakes.
Right.
What I find happens is you start to notice things that you hadn't noticed before. And so, first of all, to say onna is not wrong. And in certain situations, you say onna no kata, or you might say jose. And you have to develop a sense of which one is appropriate in which context. And that sense develops over time after having been involved in different situations, whether as a participant, listening to other people talk, watching TV, whatever it might be. You start to develop a better sense. You start to notice things over time. Now, having someone point something out to you is one way of noticing it. It's not a bad idea to read a grammar book once you're very good in the language, in the target language, because it again helps you notice things. But I just think we notice more and more things as we get further and further along in the language. And I don't worry about, and I don't think people should worry about mistakes they make in the early stages, because they just don't have enough experience in the language. Yeah. So how are they possibly going to know these things? And even if they read the rule, I mean, studying a rule or having a teacher teach you something may have very little impact. You may learn it then, understand it then, forget it the following week, and notice it again 6 months later. So, I don't worry about things in the early stages. No.
I remember a long time ago, you used to always talk about I'm not sure it was like the 5 keys of language learning, and one of them was the ability to notice.
Yeah, 3 keys actually, but yeah.
3. Okay, there we go. That was, the first time you said that must have been 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I think. And I've found the same thing to be true. And I've honestly found I think one of the greatest abilities that polyglots develop, or just people who learn lots of languages over a period of time, is it's just becoming sort of hypersensitive to noticing things. And it becomes sort of second nature. So when I'm listening to someone speak, even in a new language, I know what I should be at least looking out for. And I just notice lots and lots and lots of things. And I find that you just end up with tons and tons of data points. And so if I'm learning Swedish, for example, and I'm talking to someone or watching a television show or listening to a podcast, if I hear a word that I recognize, I'm noticing many, many things about that. I'm noticing what was the context that it was used in, or like what was the phrase like, or, I'm just noticing lots of things. And I think that is a skill that polyglots develop, is just that ability to know what to look out for and then notice a lot more stuff. more quickly.
Yeah, I think the process might be a little bit less deliberate than that. I think it just happens naturally. Because we have been exposed to so many languages, we are naturally, without even wanting to be that way, we're more curious about language, how languages work, and we're more confident as learners. I mean, these are things that happen. That's why people who speak a few languages, 4, 5, 6, find it easier to learn new languages. They're just more observant. It's like if you play 3 or 4 sports, it's going to be easier for you to pick up a 5th sport. So to close out here, so tell us which languages you speak.
So I speak French, Japanese, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, German, Swedish.
Oh.
And I'm now learning Mandarin Chinese.
My goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Not quite as many as you. I know you have a surprising
You're
catalog.
young yet. I didn't know that many when I was your age either. Okay. Any final thoughts for my viewers?
Just want to say it's a pleasure to be on the channel. Again, when I was in Japan, that was when I first started learning more languages than just Japanese, and I actually had a massive playlist of all the videos on this very channel. And I remember while doing the dishes, ironing, I would listen to them, and I honestly learned a lot of the principles that guided me through the next 10 years. So it's just a pleasure to be on your channel, and thanks for connecting.
And language learning is all about enjoying it.
It is.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Bye, Robin.
All right, Steve.